presentation, you will see in the upper corner, wait, that way, from seeing me, it says speaker view. I encourage you to select that so that when the panelist speaks, you'll get to see them speaking and you'll know who's it coming from. Eric, I have to say, seeing your little munchkin in the background was absolutely adorable.
Of course, now she's being shy, but you know, that's the reason we do it, right?
That's fantastic. And that must have felt so good to have your two daughters and your wife at the finish line. I could only imagine that joy and relief of that success.
I think for them too, right? And just to really quick, I think there was such fear, and you know, everybody around me was afraid because of the challenge and the fear that comes with type 1, right? I mean, just day to day. And so to get their arms around me again, there was this great sense of relief, and so it was comforting to know for them that I was able to get through it, and they were watching my blood sugars all along.
Yeah. Yeah, it must have been fantastic for them to have the Dexcom Clarity watching you from across the world. And you know, that speaks to my heart and probably to the hearts of the people out there who are caretakers, be it healthcare professionals, family members, how powerful that emotional pull is, and how wonderful it is to have not only your mental strength, but now these technologies that can help us feel safer and literally be safer during whatever event we're doing, be it running a marathon, sleeping, working. And I really appreciate the little victories. I think we can all appreciate that. If you get a perfect blood sugar after eating a meal, you feel like you nailed it, and that we don't lose, we learn. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
So I saw some questions come in. If people have additional questions for Eric, don't hesitate to throw them into the chat box. We will open it up for Q&A for him after the panel discussion. A reminder that, actually, I guess I'll just do this now. In the chat box is where you can ask your questions. The chat box will also be where you will find our Tandem disclaimer. So I'll get that out of the way. And up next, we will have our panel of guests who I will shortly introduce. They're here to discuss automated insulin delivery in this new world. They will provide our viewers with a real-world insight into the first ever advanced hybrid closed-loop technology, the Control-IQ algorithm that works with the t:slim X2 and the Dexcom G6. For those who are unfamiliar with the t:slim X2 or the automated features, allow me to share just a basic overview real quick right now, and then I'm going to encourage you to go to the Tandem Diabetes Care website after this event to look into the actual system itself more. I was going to enter the website, but I didn't. Maybe someone else could enter the Tandem Diabetes Care website. So the t:slim X2, it's a small touchscreen, Bluetooth-enabled insulin pump that can be used as a standalone pump, or you can integrate it with the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor. It's the only pump with a software-based platform that allows users to add new software without the need to purchase a new device hardware, and oftentimes insurance makes you wait 4 years. So that's hugely powerful because diabetes technology is evolving at such a rapid pace that you really need to be able to update the software on your pump at your convenience. So when it's used with the Dexcom G6 CGM, you can choose one of two predictive insulin delivery technologies. The Basal IQ came out, I believe, in 2018. And what that does is it keeps you safe from hypoglycemia. It's going to reduce the frequency and the duration of low glucose events by predicting glucose levels 30 minutes ahead and suspending insulin if they are expected to drop below 80, or it will suspend if you actually are under 70. The second software that is now available that just came out at the end of 2019 is called, it's called Control-IQ. I just realized that I would like to share my presentation so you don't just have to stare at my face. So if you'll bear with me, this will give you a time to take a quick breath. All right. Share that and go. So I apologize. So this is a picture if anyone hasn't seen the t:slim X2. This is what it looks like with the automation running off of the Dexcom CGM on the home screen. So Control-IQ is now the advanced hybrid closed loop. So not only is it helping to keep you safe from lows, it's also helping to keep you safe from highs. It's an advanced hybrid closed loop technology that's designed to increase time in range. The ADA says time in range is 70 to 180. So the goal of the system is to keep you in that space. It's going to predict glucose levels 30 minutes ahead and adjust insulin delivery accordingly, including automatic correction boluses. The reason it's an advanced system is because it's partnered with Dexcom G6. You can make dosing decisions. So the pump can literally give you a dose of insulin in the background without you having to stop your life to correct for a potential high blood sugar. So it sounds great, it is great, but I think you are all here to learn from actual users about how it's helping them in their real life and what tips they have for best practices. So our panelists are going to provide you with more information how to make the most of the system. We encourage you to enjoy the Q&A presentation and then enter any outstanding questions you have into the chat box. So you all know Eric Tozer. He will be one of our panelists, and he'll give you some insights of his experience using Control-IQ. And as you now know, he's the diabetes ambassador, whose participation today is courtesy of Tandem. He empowers the community through sports and utilizes his athletic accomplishments as a platform to inspire and educate. In 2019, he made history becoming the first person with type 1 diabetes to complete the World Marathon Challenge. Up next, up there is his face in case you forgot what it looks like. We have Dr. Elizabeth Fazy. Dr. Elizabeth Fazy is an adult endocrinologist at Hartford Healthcare Medical Group in Farmington, Connecticut. She's been practicing for 20 years and has lived with type 1 diabetes for 31. Before moving to Connecticut 9 years ago, she was on the faculty at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and Emory University after completing her fellowship at the University of Virginia. She enjoys taking care of all endocrine patients, but has a special passion for caring for persons with diabetes, and also has been an advocate for insulin pump therapy ever since she went on a pump 30 years ago. Carrie Driscoll is a pediatric nurse practitioner currently practicing at Connecticut Children's. She also has had type 1 diabetes for 29 years, and she's worn an insulin pump for 19 of those. Mr. Jonathan Chappell, many of you in the Connecticut area might recognize his face. He's been a lawyer since 2005, currently with the firm of Feldman, Pearlstein, and Green, representing over 150 homeowners and condo associations. In the past, he's represented and consulted with families about the federal anti-discrimination rights that protect T1D students in schools. He has been living with type 1 himself for 20 years and has been president and board member for our local Connecticut JDRF chapter. Riley Swerdloff and her mother, Dahlia, are here with us today. Riley was diagnosed 2 years ago in New York when they were home visiting family. Her and her family are currently living in Whistler, British Columbia, and working with their doctors remotely. She says that she was excited to switch to the Tandem Control-IQ because she wanted more freedom from diabetes when she is with her friends. And her mother is also type 1 for 27 years. She's been on shots, she's been on pens, she's been on multiple daily injections, and she says that she's intrigued by the automated delivery system and excited for her daughter to be on it. I have a feeling I will be using it soon. I sure hope so, Dahlia. Ella Switzer and her mother, Teresa, are also on our panel. Ella was diagnosed at age 10, just before her 5th birthday. She is a competitive swimmer and swims 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and also does dry land activities. She does backcountry skiing in Vermont every weekend in the winter, and she loves to be active and doesn't want diabetes to slow her down. Her mom, Teresa, has worked hard to allow Ella to do everything she wants. It has often taken a lot of work to give others the confidence to have Ella fully participate in things like camping, skiing, and sleepovers, but it's definitely worth it, she says. With all the new technology each year, it really does feel like the burden of type 1 diabetes is less and less. And sleeping through the night almost every night is really great. Jake Casper. Jake Casper is a 16-year-old now and was diagnosed at the age of 13 months. And I believe he went on a pump shortly thereafter. He's going to be a senior at La Cueva High School in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's been very active with JDRF, especially the Ride to Cure program, and has completed 4 100-mile rides so far. I feel like he could follow in Eric's footsteps and become a speaker about those athletic endeavors. He says that he loves computer programming and hopes to study computer science and mechanical engineering in college. And last but certainly not least, we have Bunny Casper. This is another familiar face here in the Connecticut area. Bunny is a 77-year-old living well with type 1 diabetes, she says. She's an adult support group leader. She's a mentor, and she's the grandmother of 2 kiddos with type 1 diabetes. And I guess kiddos isn't the right word because one of them is on our panel tonight. Go back to Jake. And she's an advocate with the goal of raising awareness and educating the public on type 1 diabetes and its needs. If you're interested in the greater Connecticut, New York area in getting more involved or becoming part of a support group, please contact your local JDRF team to get connected with Bunny. She's a fantastic resource for the community for questions. And with that, I will pose the first question to Bunny. So let's stop sharing. Let's talk about automation. So Bunny, now that you are on an automated insulin delivery system, how has life changed for you?
Well, it's a great question and very timely because just yesterday on Facebook, I got Facebook memories that told me that a decade ago I started on insulin pump. And today I'm delighted to talk to you about on to control IQ, because I would tell you that after days of living with type 1, this is the biggest change that has happened to me in my life. Extremely positive way. I spend 5% less time thinking about and dealing with my T1D than I have ever spent before, which gives me the opportunity to be in social situations, to be in board meetings, in environments where people are finally listening to what I have to say instead of paying attention to me taking care of my diabetes. My control IQ handles mostly everything. And the fact that I get to sleep at night allows me to have a lot more presence of mind and ability to think things through clearly and present myself much better. People don't understand how much time we spend every day dealing with it and not having to deal with it. That much time is the most amazing thing you could ever imagine.
Thanks, Bunny. We're having a little bit of audio issue. I'm not sure if there may be I think the last time we had an issue, you moved over a little bit and it was better. I'll take the same question. Can I ask Jonathan to chime in? Go ahead and unmute yourself, Jonathan.
It's taken a lot of the burden off of living with it. I'll tell you that Eric mentioned nights, and I can't remember the last time I woke up in the morning with an out of range reading, and my numbers are usually about 75 to 85% in range with less than 3% low. And that's amazing. You know, the A1C was always good. Mine are always low 6s at least, but there's a lot of ways to get to a 6.0 A1C. You could be 250 all day or half the day and you know 50 for the other half. That's what I used to do. But this control system is it's really kind of plug and play. It's, you know, it calibrates itself and you just let it drive. You know, occasionally, of course, any device, there's things that happen that are not ideal, but very few times. I'll say it that way.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I think the goal of any device is to reduce the burden. The question becomes, does it actually do that? Would anyone else on the panel like to speak to how it's changed their life? Let me, Eric?
Yeah, Carrie, I'll just add, during this time, one of the big improvements it's made for me is with my telemedicine visits, able to, kind of show my doctor real time, ahead of time, all that data on a pump has made our appointments more efficient, more effective, given sort of greater actionable kind of insight and next steps for ways to improve.
Great. Yeah, that data is, I'm sure, super helpful. Jake, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so for starters, as a little bit of a comparison, over the last few days, I've actually been completely without a CGM, and that alone has been a very drastic change from using the Control IQ. For starters, I had to set an alarm. I think I have 4 alarms throughout the night, so already sleep is starting to get a little bit iffy. The other thing I've noticed is I've been low more often, like relatively more often without my Dexcom on, because the Control IQ is not really pitching in anything there. So when I have the Control IQ on, I notice that I'm almost never low. Like I used to have juice by my bed, but I have not had to use that at all, really, when I have the Control IQ on, at least over the night. Over the day, mostly my fault, but it works really well.
Great, that's awesome to hear. Now, the reality is you still have to be engaged in your diabetes, right? This is a wonderful system and it's super intelligent and sophisticated and simple, but it doesn't mean we don't have diabetes. So I think our panelists will also be sharing with you some things they've done to maximize the system and do their part to set it up for extra success. So does anyone want to speak to, first we'll ask what your favorite features of the automation are. What does it specifically do that makes your life easier? And then maybe we can add that into what have you done working with your healthcare provider to have the best experience with it, as some people in the audience will probably be transitioning onto it as well. So I will pose this question. Ella, do you mind speaking on your favorite features?
Yeah, so I really like the exercise mode version of it, because I personally can't have any insulin on board when I go into my swim practices, but about like an hour beforehand, I'll turn on exercise mode and I will almost never go low during practice anymore, which used to be a big problem for me during the year. But now that I turn it on, I have like a steady line right before practice, which is really helpful.
You want to talk about halfway through the end?
Yeah, so halfway through my practice, I have to get out of the pool and test my blood sugar because my Dexcom doesn't pick up. And then at the end, I have to test and instantly give some kind of bolus because I don't wear my pump when I swim. So I miss all the basal. So I have to give some insulin or maybe treat a low. But then it's really helpful to have the Control IQ and the basal shut off so that when I go high, or if I go high after, then it'll give me those boluses and I don't have to worry so much about doing it myself.
Swimming is tricky.
Yeah,
Swimming is tricky because she's in the pool for 2 hours. And so, you know, she takes her pump off because she can't swim competitively with her pump on. So giving a little bit of insulin halfway through, even though she's making up for some of that missed basal, when she stops, probably within 5 or 10 minutes, she just shoots up. Her blood sugar starts to go through the roof. But the Control IQ has really helped even out the curve, so to speak. So she doesn't go as high and stay as high for as long. So the exercise mode is helping her get in the pool and stay in the pool without going low. And then on the other end of it, when she gets out, she's able to stay in a better range with that 1, 2, 3 hours after swimming. She's not as high as she was before.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Exercise is such a challenge during exercise as well as after exercise. And I never really thought about it, but it sounds like Control IQ helps to flatten the curve of diabetes.
Yeah, yeah.
Eric, would you like to speak to exercise? And then if anyone else wants to speak to their favorite features next.
Yeah, sure. And we could have a whole hour on just that. But just, I mean, that's a great point you just made. If you can flatten that curve, you can go into exercise with a flat number. Easier said than done. But if you can, then that gets you off to a great start. I think the simple fact of, and I didn't learn this until 3 years ago, different types of exercise can affect your blood sugar differently. So swimming versus lifting weights versus cycling versus soccer. I mean, there's sort of 3 buckets of exercise: that aerobic, anaerobic, and mixed, and each one will have a different impact on your blood sugar. So I think it's important to know. And Ella, as you said, you can't exercise with any insulin on board. So I know a lot of people like that. I know some people that will take, a 50% bolus. One of the questions that was just asked that I thought I would just share is with adrenaline, because I think adrenaline excitement is a big factor when it comes to sports and exercise. And the recommended practice is this isn't my recommendation. This came from the JDRF, is to do a 50% bolus for that corrective dose if you're dealing with adrenaline. So just a couple tidbits there, Carrie.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Let's see, does someone want to talk about the sleep activity?
I would be delighted to talk about the sleep activity. It's my favorite part of the pump.
I think you and everyone.
For decades, I did not sleep through the night. Decades. I'm not sure if people understand how underrated a good night's sleep is. And once I started on this program, I sleep through the night. The diabetes does not interfere with my sleep. When I get up, the flat lines, and I think diabetes type 1 is the only place in the world where line is great. But I've got those flat lines, and I celebrate them like Eric celebration every morning. And interestingly enough, my A1C has not changed that much because, like Jonathan, I was very busy controlling my diabetes all the time. I have about the same A1C now, but it's with, as I said before, 75% less work, because keeping good all night long means you don't go low, you don't shoot up high, you don't get all the crazy ups and downs, you wake up more rested, which you able to continue the day better. And it's just this sleep mode alone they should charge us extra for the sleep mode. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's a fantastic opportunity for all of us to live a more normal life.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just jump in and second that. I think for my
Yeah,
patient,
please do.
and for myself, my favorite feature of Control IQ is sleep. And I think especially for people who are anxious about sleeping at night, or going low or going high, this really gives people much greater confidence to trust the pump. But I think, as the most of us know, it really is part of this getting used to a pump, and especially CGM, is really trusting the pump. And so I think that's a hurdle for a lot of people who've been challenged with not having a pump that really makes life easier and lets you let go a little bit. But the sleep mode definitely lets people let go, and I think really helps to reduce a lot of anxiety that I've seen in my patients over the years.
Gary, could I add something as far as our parents' perspective?
Sure.
So I certainly recognize, I can't imagine everything that Bunny has gone through over her years of having diabetes and checking herself for decades. Ella has just recently had her 10-year anniversary with having diabetes. Just from a parent's perspective, the combination between the Dexcom And now the control IQ is just, it's really, it's amazing. We used to take turns between myself and my husband. One night I would do it, the next night my husband would do it. And it's just this hovering over a child, and you don't really know, like you test her, so you're pricking her finger and she's moving out of the way and smearing blood across the bed sheets, and and then you wonder, okay, so how I need to set an alarm. So is it, in a half an hour, 2 hours? Like, just a transition that we've gone through over the last few years has really been remarkable. It's just really amazing that now it's just so rare that we're up, and to be able to go to sleep, and if she's trending a little bit higher or a little bit lower, we're starting to get more confidence, because we're seeing that, she wakes up in the morning, and you wake up and the first thing you do is you look at her numbers, and we're like, that's pretty great. It's just really amazing. And so we've been really thankful for this new technology.
Yeah, one of the things I tell people about this
So glad to
sleep
hear.
mode is that's been my biggest and sort of my single driver for making the change. But I feel like it's a reset every night, on my type 1 management. As bad as yesterday was, or as good as it was, when I wake up tomorrow morning, barring anything crazy, my number is going to be in a great range, which is one, like Bunny said, we get to sleep through the night. That's huge. And then to have a good number to start the day, that for me is the single biggest improvement in my type 1 management in the last decade, I would say, without hesitation.
Hi, Carrie, can I add?
Sure.
Hi, this is Haley. I was on the Omnipod for 8 years, and within 3 weeks ago, I went on the IQ, Control IQ technology. I am totally amazed. My doctors had to tweak it 3 times the basal rates, and it's unbelievable. I'm so happy with it, and I would recommend it to anybody. The sleep is amazing. I don't have to have my fruit snacks by the side of my bed and wake up in the night, and it's just, I feel like it flatlines through the night. It's absolutely perfect. I wake up every morning, I look at it, and I'm still in amazement that I have this straight line, no ups and downs, and I can't say enough about it. I'm very happy.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Haley. That's actually something I was going to pose to the group. I do want to, Carrie, did you have something that you wanted to share? I'll give her a chance to unmute if she'd like to. Oh, there she is.
Sorry, I didn't know if you're talking to me. I apologize. For me, I come from kind of 2 hats in this presentation, because I have had type 1 diabetes now for almost 30 years. And I'm also a nurse practitioner, so I look at many graphs all day long in order to help individuals manage their diabetes who are utilizing Control IQ. So from a personal standpoint, sleep mode has been the greatest benefit of Control IQ, because you don't have to be perfect even going to bed at night. So for individuals who may have just misjudged a dinner, carb count, or been trending a little bit high due to a snack, the benefit of sleep mode is that it will tighten your control in the sense that it keeps you in range, and if it predicts you to be above 120, will actually provide you with a higher basal rate. However, you don't have fear of lows, because it will not provide you with the automated corrections every 1 hour. So it may take a little bit more time, even if you weren't perfect with your dinner or pre-bedtime number, in order to come down. But I guarantee you, if you have your settings right, by the time you wake up in the morning, you will always be within range if you have the settings where they need to be. So it's nice to know that you can actually not always be 100% perfect, and maybe have even made a little bit of a mistake and run a little bit high at night. And with the benefit of sleep mode, it will always bring you down without the fear of you dropping to a hypoglycemic range by the time you get there.
Yeah, that's really well said. That's actually probably a good opportunity to kind of fuse in the management of automated insulin delivery with your partnership with your healthcare providers. So to you, Carrie, and to Dr. Fazey, and then we could throw it back to the group as the patients, you know, what do you recommend for this new kind of telehealth world and social distancing? A, can people still start diabetes devices in the t:slim? And B, what do they need to do to best prepare for their visits with you remotely?
So we have opened up our Pump Start program again, and it has actually been running wonderfully. So we are prescribing pumps to both individuals who have not been on pumps yet, and then also to people who have been on pumps and are maybe transitioning from one pump to another. So the main thing to determine is if the patient is a good candidate for a pump at this time in order to start remotely, because we want to make sure that this is safe. In the pediatric world, we used to do saline starts just to assure that the pump was working, we could have contact, make sure the family was ready. We're not able to do that really in the telehealth world, but it doesn't mean it's going to stop us from proceeding with being able to utilize this technology at this time. So we still are putting patients who are really good at the basics of diabetes, meaning carb counting is down pat, and they are, you know, devoted to take the time to upload this technology and share it with us so that we can guide them through this process, and that they're able to have multiple visits, not just one visit, you come in, you're out, and you're on a pump, it's done. But in order for us to walk you through the process, and then there's no reason really why we can't start it, as long as you're willing to put the effort in, and we can do it safely as well.
Yeah, so I would, as I'm Elizabeth Fazey, so from the adult perspective, since I'm an adult endocrinologist, I would say this is a great time to go on a pump if you are savvy with technology. This hasn't stopped us. We've been putting people on, you know, insulin pumps, people brand new to pump therapy, or people transitioning from one pump, you know, to a Tandem IQ, basal IQ, or control IQ, with absolutely no issues. Again, you know, I treat mostly a lot of people with type 2 diabetes, which obviously has a much higher risk of, you know, if they got COVID-19, the outcomes are worse. We don't really have that data with type 1 yet. So we've really been doing mostly essentially telemedicine. So in preparation for a visit, if you do have a telemedicine visit with your provider, diabetes is an awesome forum to do telemedicine. The key is really, the big struggle is making sure you know how to download your data. And obviously, you know, the website from Tandem can guide you. You can call customer support. There's awesome YouTube videos from kids age 11 to 80 who are doing YouTube videos as to how to upload nowadays to prepare you for your visit. But having that data and the super cool feature of Zoom, as we've experienced tonight, is I can share the data with my patients and review it and go over it and make adjustments. So that has been absolutely fabulous. And I think definitely in this world of where we're all quarantining and trying to social distance and take care of ourselves, being able to communicate with our patients is really even paramount, because we want to keep good control. So I would say, if you're comfortable with technology, there's no stopping you from moving forward and transitioning with any pump or sensor technology.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'll back you up on that with some data, Dr. Fazey. So we continue to do t:slim starts 100% virtually right now. And our service levels from a training standpoint, the reported feedback from our users has actually gone up from, I think it's 92% to 96% satisfaction with the training process, which I think really does speak to the ability for us to continue to thrive with diabetes devices in this virtual world. If I can ask either first I'll ask Ella and Teresa if you want to speak to your virtual visits, and then Dahlia and Riley either to a virtual visit or how it was to get started on the T-Slim in this virtual world.
Well, we just had our first televisit like 2 weeks ago. Ella? It was pretty seamless, I think. It's very easy to upload all of the pump information to the web, and then physicians are able to look at it, and they're getting everything, I think, in that one snapshot. So your blood sugars, how much insulin you're using, how many carbs you're bolusing for. It's so much easier than it was like 10 years ago when you're writing it down or you're talking about it. And then as you transition to the Dexcom, and then now with the Control-IQ, it's just gotten easier. And then virtually the technology is there. So it was quite easy for us to have those opportunities to speak to our physician. And then when we changed from the basal IQ to the Control-IQ, just to go through those modules that we had to do online, it was easy. Like they're well done. It was straightforward. We did them, we set it up, and we were good to go. We had to make some changes along the way to go from basal to Control-IQ, but to do the upgrade was very easy. Have anything to say about it?
No.
You felt
Great, thank
comfortable
you.
talking to your doctor?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Hi. So we're still fairly new to this pump, but we were lucky enough to be able to be trained. Riley was able to be trained virtually. We were supposed to visit New York to be trained the beginning of March, and then we, due to everything, had to cancel that trip. And so we were able to be trained virtually, which I think has been amazing. We were lucky to have the opportunity to do that. We were followed by Riley's doctors in New York, and then we also have a doctor here. We're in British Columbia, Canada, just so that we can have somebody locally. But it's been amazing to be able to do it from so far away and to feel like I would have the same phone call with somebody that was a doctor an hour away, even though they're across the country. I will say the sleep part has been the best part for us because she's also only been diabetic, Riley, for 2 years. And 2 years being a teenager, our numbers are not always where we want them to be. And still they're not on this pump, but it definitely is better. And we're definitely waking up in the morning with good blood sugars. And so sort of like what Eric said, like it's like we can restart the day every day and kind of take it from there, as opposed to, you know, starting the day with 250 and trying to figure it out from there, which is doesn't always lead for the best day. I am not on this pump. I am currently wearing a different pump, but I am intrigued very much by the exercise factor of this pump, because I think it would help me. We're a very active family. We do all kinds of skiing, backcountry skiing, hiking, overnight camping. And I just think there are so many features of this pump that would really benefit me as well. So we might be able to do it together one of these days. You have anything to say about?
Awesome, here's to hoping.
Yeah, so the training like virtually was really easy. The doctor who like trained us, she explained everything really well, and she, like, if we ever have a question, she answers it really easily, and also explains it really well. So
I think she might be on
yeah.
this call. Kelly, thank you.
Hey guys,
Hi.
I'm gonna spare you my face, but hello. It's so good to hear your voice and to see you on here.
It was been really a pleasure working with you, and it's just nice to know that we can ask questions and get a response back really fast. Like we're never nervous about anything with the pump. And I mean, it helps. I've been diabetic for a long time, but the only one thing I think that is tricky is if the Dexcom is off, then the control seems to be off. And I think that's probably one of the only issues that I would say we've had. I don't know if anybody else has that.
Sure. Does anyone want to speak to any tricks they found to making sure their CGM stays connected to their t:slim?
I think the first thing is always keeping your pump facing outward, and I don't know if everyone knows that, but keeping the glass portion, if it's in the pocket or tucked around, if it's close to your skin, then obviously it has a harder time in order to pick up. So just making sure that your pump is always outward facing, the connection tends to be better. That's my one trick.
What I usually do is, so I have my Dexcom on my arm and I wear my site on my stomach. And sometimes I don't really like that the tubing can pull, but you really should keep the pump on the same side or like wherever your Dexcom is, because then it'll pick up and it's not out of range. It seems to have a very low range. So like if my Dexcom's on the left, then I have to have my pump like on the left side. I wear it on a clip. So like the left side of my shorts is where I have to clip my pump. And then like if I change it to the right side, it has to change to the right side or it'll go out of range like really easily.
Yeah, sure. That's a really great point. I know some people, you know, one of the important aspects of pump therapy is the site rotation, right? Even with injections, you don't want to use the same location too often. So people will change their Dexcom and then change their infusion site around that so it can stay on the same side of the body. Speaking on that topic, I think that's a beautiful segue. So we have people in the audience and people even amongst us who are getting used to pump therapy. Why connect to something? How did you overcome maybe not wanting to be connected to something? We know the benefits of the automation, but talk to me about how you wear it. Is tubing, how do you deal with the tubing?
I'll go first. So I started back in October. I would say within 2 or 3 sleeps, I was used to the tube kind of, you know, being around. And now if I get, you know, I'll just kind of lay it next to my hip, I guess, on the bed. So, you know, it's there obviously, but the benefits far outweigh that component of it. For exercise, I just tuck it on my shorts, kind of, you know, I sometimes, Carrie, you mentioned having the screen face outwards. I didn't know that until recently. And so I would flip it sort of inside my short, just to give it that extra layer of security. But I'm able to go for a run and have it clipped on and it doesn't bounce around. I actually go for the longer tubing. I know there's a couple different tube length options. I go for the longest one available just so that I can kind of have that extra slack if needed, so I can put it kind of wherever. But I got used to the cord faster, the tube faster than I thought I would, especially hadn't been, you know, 7-ish years since I was on a pump last.
So when I was little, I used to wear it in like a little belt. It's called a tally gear. And that's helpful now. Like if I go for a run or something, then I will wear it in the tally gear so it doesn't bounce around, which can be annoying. I don't really remember what it's like to not have a tubing because I got it when I was so small. But the tally gear was really helpful when I was that small that I didn't have to worry about it falling off and ripping out. Like if I was at preschool, I couldn't change the site on my own, and that would be very like not good.
It's been a transition too. So she wears it now on the side of her pants, but when we went from the tally gear to wearing it on the side of her pants, it's just a matter of trying to, I don't know, be flexible and find a different system. So now when she's skiing, she still has to have it close to her body so the insulin doesn't freeze. And so we found this long underwear that has like a side pocket. And so the Control IQ, it's been great for us in the last winter too, that we can put the pump in the side pocket of her long underwear. And then she has her phone in her outside shell jacket in a little pocket, so she can just take her phone out and see what her blood sugar is and not have to access the pump, because she did have to do that before. We've gone through the whole transition.
I have found that I am really good at jerking off my set by getting tangled in the tubing. So what has evolved for me, guys can't do this, but I put my pump in a baby sock so it doesn't slide around and it feels more comfortable, and I tuck it in my bra. And so, and I curl up the tubing so that it's smooth along my body from the set to the pump itself. Now that's not very good for access, but it sure is comfortable. And at night, I pin that baby sock with the pump in it into my underpants. So that's what has worked for me.
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for sharing. That's real life with diabetes, right? And with the pump. If you can see my screen, the Tandem comes with a clip, and it's free, so that's lovely. I found this clip on Amazon. It's called the hip clip, and it just keeps the pump very small. It's very durable. So for anyone that's thinking, how do I even wear a pump? The clip is the way to do it, right? So that if you don't have a pocket, you clip it to your pants, you tuck it in your bra. So that's one tip that I have, is making sure you have some sort of a clip that helps you out.
Well, Jake,
do you want to speak to that real quick?
Yeah, so I can also speak from experience, because in the past I have worn the Omnipod, which is a tubingless pump. So the thing about the Omnipod is that the pod itself, for me at least, was very easy to knock off of my person. So I would constantly have to change the Omnipod, change it, like throughout the day, I would have to change it sometimes 3 or 4 times, depending on what classes I had that day. The other thing is the controller might get lost. I might forget it in this class, and by the time I go to lunch, I'll be like, oh shoot, where's my controller? So for us, that's a pretty big problem. Now, one thing that the tubing does solve is that the pump is never going to be more than 2 feet away from your person. And for all of us, that's a good thing, because we're all human, we're all forgetful. The other thing is, so the site itself where the tubing attaches to is a lot smaller than most of these wireless pumps. So I don't mind it that much. It's not very noticeable to me. It keeps the pump right next to my person, so I never have to worry about losing my insulin. And I think it's a relatively good thing.
Thanks, Jake.
I was just going to add,
yeah.
The comment about sort of having the tube get caught on a door handle or whatnot, and ripping off. I actually knocked off more pumps when I was on an Omnipod than I have with the tubing, which I just sort of tuck the tubing in, if it's clipped onto my shorts or my pants or whatever, I'll just tuck the tubing down so it doesn't get snagged on a door handle or whatnot. But yeah, I used to, I'm clumsy, but I would just knock my arm or whatever it was with the pod and knocked more off that way.
And I think the reality is going to be, go ahead, Carrie.
I just have one more thing to say, kind of to input in here. From someone like myself who's gone through many different types of pumps, different managements of diabetes, meaning injections, pumps, and also as a healthcare provider who likes to try everything and anything that is on the market, because I feel that that is my job in order to best serve my, my patients, that the Control IQ, despite having a tube, which has never been an issue for me, the access to automation has been such a life changer and benefit in order to be able to somewhat step away from worrying about diabetes at all moments of every day, knowing that if I'm not perfect at doing exactly what I'm supposed to do, I still have something behind me to help me, that it's always going to be worth it at this point. So I know for some people, a tube versus not having a tube is a big decision. And I understand that for people. But right now, I would just suggest that the automation and the benefit and results that you can obtain from this automation is so wonderful that I would highly consider it for any individual with type 1 diabetes at this time.
Yeah, and I would I would echo Carrie's comments that as same thing as a healthcare professional who has been an early adopter of every possible technology in diabetes and every pump on the market, going back to the GlucoWatch, which most people don't even remember back in 2000, for sure, hands down, this really minimizes the effort you have to think about your diabetes and maintain good control. So, I mean, all the points that Carrie's mentioned, you know, trusting the pump, not worrying about what you do when you go to sleep, not being, you know, thinking about exactly what you have to do with your blood sugars. It's paramount compared to any other device that's on the market. At least in my opinion, as somebody who's worn, you know, pretty much every pump that's come out since 1989.
I love that perspective. And you know, for someone that's not on a pump that's considering it, you can always go back to your injections, right? So there's really no harm in seeing how this helps you and then deciding if you want to, you know, go off it or stay on it. We are definitely over time. There is one question that, and we've been kind of answering the questions as they've come in. Thank you to those who've been able to stay. John, do you mind throwing up on the screen real quick for us the resources, so if anyone does need to go, they can at least check those out real quick. And then one question I want to pose to the group that I have seen come up a number of times is calibration. People who have tried a different pump that requires a lot of calibration, maybe they're used to sensors that aren't accurate. Do you calibrate your system? Do you trust the data that's coming through? Talk to me, panelists, about how you manage the Dexcom G6 driving the automation.
Carrie, what I could say is that the only finger sticks that I get now are quarterly or every 4 months when I go to the doctor. I completely rely on the CGM, and if you know, and a lot of providers on this call maybe could back me up, but I believe there's about a 20% error rate per FDA standards. It's probably about the same for the CGM portion. So I've actually received a letter from my insurance carrier to make sure I'm healthy because I have not been filling my script for strips.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the one thing in the world of diabetes is that it's constantly improving. So technologies are always getting better. So if you compare the first Dexcom to the G6 that we have now, I mean, it is getting more accurate. Is it perfect? No. Does it still lag behind about 20 minutes from a finger stick? Yes. Can you completely rely on it if you feel weird or you have symptoms, but your Dexcom is telling you one thing? Don't trust it. Go and do a finger stick. So that's pretty much what I tell my patients, is if it doesn't match with how you're feeling, you know, you still need to get those test strips. Don't throw them out, because I think nothing is perfect. I mean, even finger sticks aren't perfect, right? There's still a variation compared to a serum glucose. So, but the key thing is, you know, using your common sense too. I mean, I would love to say that, you know, this Control IQ is a panacea for diabetes, but it's not. You still have to think, you still have to, you know, sense how you feel, and you can't always trust the Dexcom. So I do tell my patients, if it doesn't make sense or you just don't trust what it's saying, you can go in and recalibrate, you know, a G6. And get yourself back on track. That's a legitimate thing to do.
I think it's important to mention, I don't know if you guys can see me right now. I think it's important to mention though, that we make sure that if you're calibrating at the right times, because we don't want to introduce more error into the system in order to confuse the control IQ. So a lot of people say, oh, it's way off, and they want to jump into calibrating. And if the blood sugar is not stable with an arrow directly to the side, the system should never be calibrated at that time. So just make sure, because we are dosing information off this, that we're really thinking about when's the right time to calibrate.
Carrie, I think you're muted.
Oh, did anyone hear any of that?
you weren't reading my lips. You know, and things like that, like when to calibrate and those types of decisions, having a caregiver like Carrie or like Dr. Fazy, or your Dexcom rep or your Tandem rep. I mean, those are great resources to ask your very specific questions to. But these are all very good general, general principles. One thing that John just posted in the chat group, those resources that you saw on the screen, he just copied and pasted them. So if you'd like to copy them and take them with you from this session, that's a great way to continue following up with our community with these types of questions. Facebook pages, you can keep asking these questions to our users. Let's go ahead and wrap it up before 6:30. So any final comments from our panelists, or if any one of the Tandem people in the group have seen a question that hasn't been addressed, we'll go ahead and close up shop here in the next couple of minutes.
To comment before we go. I really had the opportunity to share my experience with you today. And I want to remind you that this new technology is a life changer. It's a serious game changer. It changes everything about living with type 1. It's not an artificial pancreas yet until we have an artificial pancreas. And give yourself the opportunity to find out what it's like to spend 75% less of your time dealing with your type 1. And you're going to find out that there's a lot more life to be lived than spending all that time taking care of.
Carrie, I'll just add that I think you made a great point of all of this is sort of our experiences, and as we all know, type 1 management is so individualized. So, like I often say, like a broken record, just make sure you talk with your endocrinologist about, hey, Eric did this. Would this work for us? What do we do? Because what works for one type 1 doesn't necessarily work for another. But I was talking the other day, and Bunny, I think you made a great point. The time in range is something that we talk a lot about now, right? As opposed to just your A1C. And so how we feel about our time in range, or at least for me, how I felt my time in range was versus how the data actually shows it, has progressively gotten better over my last, 8 months now. And Bunny, like you said, I mean, just kind of for me to wrap up, I mean, the game changer for me was being able to wake up now every morning. And if nothing else, hopefully, if this raises the bar for algorithms and for automation for all the other companies to now catch up, that's a win for us as a community, because being diagnosed today versus a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago it's an incredible time with what's at our disposal. So, I think we all thank all the diabetes companies for continuing to push each other and make the technology so much better.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
For the activity, should you put the activity on like an hour before you are active? Is that the recommendation?
That's a good
again, I
question,
think that,
Dr.
yeah,
Frazee.
yeah, I think everyone's different, and exercise is a huge area where we don't have nice, straightforward guidelines because the different type of exercise, what your level of control is, you know, what you're going to be doing, how long, when did you last eat. There's just a myriad of variables. So I think that you know, that's something you definitely want to do trial and error with your provider. But in general, yes, I mean, if you've got active insulin on board, or you know, you're going to go out and you know the certain exercise always, you know, tends to drop you low, definitely I would say, you know, an hour, at least an hour before you're going to go out and do some, you know, rigorous or even maybe not that rigorous exercise, definitely makes sense if you want to, you know, avoid hypoglycemia. But again, every scenario is different, and you've got to kind of review it, you know, with your own provider. And a lot of it, I hate to say, when it comes to exercise, you know, is trial and error.
Yeah, I haven't ventured there yet. I want to try that feature on the pump, but I haven't, like I said, it's only been 3 weeks, so haven't got there.
And that's a fantastic question, Haley. Oh gosh, I just lost what I was going to say. Oh, ignore me. Okay. So I'd love to keep this conversation going, but it is 6:28. I will leave the session going for a moment. I highly encourage if anyone wants to take a look through the chat box. There were some good questions, and I really want to thank Kelly Gumbel and those that have been replying to people in the chat box. Eric, thank you for addressing your people's questions in there. Any final question? Well, no, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much to our panelists, to John and Cheryl and Kathy with the JDRF for putting this together. It would be great to do something like this again in the future. We have a beautiful community. Keep up the good work, and let's all strive for those little victories. If you want to get more information, contact your JDRF people, contact Tandem Diabetes Care, or ask your provider who you can speak to get more information. And I wish everyone a very safe and healthy night and rest of the year. Thanks for joining.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.